Hello there, my name is Matthew Palmer, welcome to the studio. Today on this watercolour workout I want to show you how to paint this beautiful flamingo, this beautiful watercolour vignette. Let's get started. We'll take a quick look at the sketch and the materials. Now the sketch is here. It's all sketched in relatively small sheet of paper. This is kind of around A4 in size, 1/8 imperial, 11 by 7 inch Matthew Palmer watercolour paper. Beautiful surface, ready to go. Materials, got some kitchen paper there and the water, of course, the top. I'm going to be using just a few brushes, few colours. One colour that we shall be using will be some rose madder. Now this is a very pink colour, and that has got a little bit just here, beautiful colour on the rose madder there. We've got some Matthew Palmer natural red, that's here. We've got some white, which will be very useful on this picture, and also some natural turquoise. Some natural grey for adding some shadows as well. That's pretty much all we need for this painting. I've got some natural blue there as well. Brushes, not many brushes really. We've got a Matthew Palmer medium and small super point, which is actually a size 10 and a size 6. Also something for some detail. This one is a Matthew Palmer branching detail brush or a rigger brush, and potentially, I'm not sure just yet, but we might use a lift out brush as well. Let's get started. Now I've not actually stuck this to a board. I don't really need to be honest, because I'm just going to sort of work quite freely here. And I think this also kind of proves the point that you don't need to worry too much about sticking to the board all the time, especially on smaller pictures. It is useful to stick to a board, especially when you're working with a bit of water like I'm doing here. But I'm wetting the page with the size 10 brush. I've got the freedom of movement here, of course, working on this desk. Slight slope is always good, so that just wants the water going on. Couple of coats of water is about where you want to be. Now that is obviously damp. We're going to shoot over to the palette here. Very simple background. We're going to take some blue, some natural blue, beautiful light clean blue, just a little wipe on the side, still with the same brush. I want to twist in with the brush flat to the paper, the background, so I'll give it a bit of a twist here. Doesn't matter if a bit of this goes over flamingo, not a problem. In some respects it will help to give a bit of tonal shadow and various things, but loosely avoiding the flamingo, of course. And then once we've done that, just put little spots. Let your paint do its thing, let it spread into that water. Clean brush, natural turquoise is a nice colour, a bit of an ocean kind of colour. There it is on the side, beautiful, very realistic sea colour. I'm going to bring that down here again, using that same logic with a twist, and let the paint just spread into the foreground. So the blue and the turquoise mix together really nicely, actually. I love how those colours work together. Now that's ready to work on flamingo, but what we need to do is we need to let this thing dry before we do anything else. So I'm just going to give it a few moments to dry, and then we'll come back to it shortly. This has had a few moments to dry off. We're going to be using a size 6 brush here. We're going to take a relatively strong natural grey, medium strong natural grey, first of all, and we're going to use this to paint in the shadows of the flamingo. So I've got the kitchen paper at hand, it's always useful to have. Not being afraid about painting this in, we're going to go, well, forget the beak for the minute, we're going to go underneath here. Now the thing is, the paper is 90% dry here, so a little bit of spread, it's perfectly fine. Just don't be afraid about letting the paint soften a little bit. That shadow comes down to the legs. I'm going to curve around the famous neck, of course. So, and also just a little bit on the brow, the head. Okay, so this is putting the shadows in first. Stay with me. What we'll do then is we'll have a little bit of shadow up here, and a lovely shadow coming down here into this second leg. Also, a little bit of a shadow there. So what you've done is you've painted almost a white flamingo, I suppose you could say, at this point. But that colour needs to blend in with some rose madder. So we'll use rose madder. You decide how strong you want this colour to be. It's quite it's a very pink. And flamingos aren't all pure vivid pink. Obviously there's a lot of pink in there. But when you paint this in, don't be afraid to mix it with the grey. Let the colours all mix in. A little bit of a wipe on the tissue is quite useful here. The eye, we'll get to the eye later. Just try and leave the eye white if you can. Paint around it. But notice how I'm encouraging that grey to mix in. Even if that grey is a little bit dry, it will blend in quite nicely. But don't leave it too long before you paint this in. Just encourage, look how I'm encouraging the colours to all mix together. Like so. So you got that nice pink colour coming. A bit more paint coming through, working on the main body. Now again, very similar. See that little splash here, we can wash that out if you need to. Just get a bit of water and just make it look as though it's either in or there. Just kind of wash it out. These things happen. It's art. It happens all the time. Work it across. Look how it's just instant shadows doing it this way. Something different maybe to try for some of you working this way, but certainly worth the energy of having a go at doing this. We could go a little bit stronger here with the rose madder, just add a little bit more colour. The sort of tail feathers, if that's what we'd call them on a flamingo, I don't know. Be a little bit deeper there in colour. I'm going to outline pretty much all of this, but just leave this piece white for the minute. Encourage the paint to mix, to blend, to become part of the picture. And of course, this being a workout, it's designed to be a quick and easy watercolour that you've got to spare half an hour or so. What better than to paint a flamingo? This middle piece, clean the brush really well, a couple of taps, and just use a bit of water to blend it. That will give us a lighter colour. Beautiful. And while that brush is a bit damp, we could just add a few little flicks to the back to make it look a little bit feathery. Quite long feathers on the backs of flamingos, and even coming down into the drumsticks, as I like to call them. There you go, beautiful, looking good. While that's having a moment to dry, we're painting the legs. Very similar story, actually. Maybe a little bit stronger with your grey. A good tip is to rotate your brush over some kitchen paper to make that brush nice and pointy. But you have a little collar of grey at the top, and then you come down the knee. The two legs are overlapping, but very similar to the way we did the body. You're painting in the shadow first. Kneecap. Come down towards the water. Now what we'll do with these is we'll blend these in and make them become part of the picture. The pink, perfect, but much lighter with the rose madder. Much lighter with the rose madder. Quite diluted here actually, and I want to blend that in. So now that's got all the base colours on apart from the beak here. We're going to get that in pretty soon. Flamingos are quite famous for having this really strong dark area on the caps and the beaks. You might want to be using a finer brush here, but don't be afraid to really have strong grey to start with, very thick. I mean, I've just got a damp brush here. I'm rolling it around in the grey blob because I want it to be very dark. And it's adding the nice kind of dark beak to the picture that's going to put life on this. And with any animal portrait, it's adding the eyes as well. So let's get on to those next. So we're nice and close in here. Just moulded the brush on a bit of kitchen paper. And you can see those almost pencil lines that divide this up into sections. Those sections are quite key. So using a good sharp brush here, grey goes all the way across the top, pretty much all the way till it meets the head. Block it up. Follow this pencil line here, and then add another curvy line there. What we'll do is very simply block that in. That's just going to go in as a solid colour. Excellent. I want to rotate the brush on the tissue just a little bit here, because what I want to do is just make sure I've got the finest tip I can out of this brush, and that goes off like so. Clean the brush really well, and wipe the brush pretty much dry, and then just ever so gently feather that edge just a little bit along the bottom of the beak, down this line here. That's kind of the mouth, the join of the beak. Make sure you're happy with the shape of it. Clean the brush a second time if you want to. Just make sure it's pretty clean. Just ever so gently tickle the edges of these lines. Can you see how it softens in? If I just sneak a little bit of rose madder here, not too much, freshened it up a little bit because it's got a bit contaminated with the grey. There's a bit of a pink glow to this area as well, so we'll get a bit of that in there. Don't want too much. I think from what I can understand, it depends on how many shrimps they eat. Is that right? As in how pink they are. Beautiful. Now, very, very fiddly bit of detail coming next. Well, you're probably going to be using something like this. A rigger brush or a branch and detail brush. Yeah, quite strong with the grey. Don't be afraid of the grey here. Get a good thick blob of grey. Wipe the brush over the edge of the palette, make it nice and pointy. So, and having the kitchen paper just to tap away that excess can sometimes be quite a useful little thing to do. But what we need to do here, we need to paint a darkness around the eye. So this is why, obviously, we're using a fine brush. Brill. You've got a nostril. Yes, you have a nostril. Most birds have one on the beaks. And a little bit of a dark edge coming off like so. That's a bit pointy for me, so I want to smooth it out a bit. Brill. I don't want to clean that brush out because it's a shame to waste the colour, so I'm just going to use a number 6 brush that's still damp. If not, you can dampen it again over the tissue, just to gently feather away the outer edge of that. Now, inside that eye, a very pale green. I didn't mention green at the start in the materials list purely because just a little bit of green, you can mix your own green of course, but just that little bit like that, just to drop into the eye like so. I mean, that is all it green wise. We'll add a bit more life to that, but it does need a little bit of time to dry. Let's just move down to the knees and the legs here. I'm happy to use that same brush, the same branch and detail brush, and I want to really sharpen up and add just a little bit of texture to these legs here. You get a few lines coming in. Almost like it's not quite as reptile skin as like a, I suppose, a garden bird, you know, but you've still got that little bit of darkness coming in. It's almost like a ring around the kneecap there, which is very interesting. Keep picking up the colour. Brilliant, looking good. Over to this one, darken the top. Do a similar thing, It's almost like you're painting shadows, but you kind of adding little lines within the flamingo's legs. Amazing how these two, should we say, scrawny legs hold that large body up. It really is. And of course, quite often these will disappear into the water, which we'll get to a little bit later. But that looks really nice. While this brush is in your hand, we'll come back up here to the beak, and I'm just going to drop in. It's probably a little bit too wet to do it yet, so I'm just going to give it a second, but I just want to add a couple of little, just a little dark spot in that eye. We shall be adding some more work to that. It's a little bit damp there, the paint has spread a little bit, but not too concerned. We're going to go up, add some shadows around the neck, just using that same logic, almost like a curve around the neck there. Come down here. A little bit of grey just on that change in direction. For it to be a little bit darker down here. I'm literally using this brush like a pencil. It's really quite addictive. So do have a go with these brushes. They are really nice things to use. Perfect. Okay, I'll let things dry off a little bit up there. We'll pop that brush to one side because I want to just work on a few other bits, basically. Like, I feel I want to grab some of that rose madder, but mix it with a bit of grey, so you get that slightly darker, almost like a plum sort of colour. And I want to add a bit of a reflection of this. So I've got the number 6 brush again here, and I've tapped on tissue to remove the excess. A little bit of a reflection of the leg, made up of little horizontal lines. Same here, of course. That's the point where they all... And that's just a good way of adding that little hint of reflection. What we could actually do here as well is get a little bit of a hint of water. So if I take some of the turquoise, which is still there, nice and pale, not strong by any means, number 6 brush on the tissue, remove any excess, and just add almost like little rings around, which gradually get wider to give a sense of, not perspective, but you know, that sort of ever decreasing circle kind of thing. We can add a bit more to this if we need to. So that gives a little bit of interest down there. And then my advice here would be surround this with a few horizontal lines to help to give that water effect. Looks quite nice. But there's very little in the way of paint on the brush. I can add a little bit more to this, a bit of shadow, but that's a good starting point. Things are nice and dry here. So back to the branch and detail brush for the minute, and back to the strong grey. Because that should be dry enough just to put a little slightly stronger dot in the eye. We shall put a highlight on that. Much better. Much better. Where we wanted it to be. Now, I did mention we was going to use a different red here. So I was going to use natural red. Take a little hint of natural red. There it is. And it's it's a deeper version of Rose Madder, not strong by any means. But what I want to do here is add a little bit of kind of a dry brush. I'll remove the excess number 6 brush and add lots of movement into the flamingo's body. It's looking a bit flat. Follow the curve, follow the folds, add some movement lines to it, add some texture. Brightens it up a lot here. I'm just going to pinch a little bit of that grey briefly. That's the same grey I've just been using for the eye, because there's a nice little, almost a shadow of dark comes around here. So it tucks in. I guess it's where the wings are folding in. And then we'll use that red I've just mixed to flick away from that, so it looks as though it's part of the just a few little hints of that in the legs, not too much. There's not as much colour in the legs there, maybe a little bit in the water as well. I'm just kind of moving the brush quite rapidly here. But you've got a basic looking flamingo there, which looks really nice, but we're going to go a little bit further with this and put some beautiful highlights in, which I always do. For me, always put that spit and polish on, a bit of grey just up down there to make a little bit more of an impression of a shadow where the wing merges in. Probably use that slightly lighter grey here. Nice dry brush. And be a little bit more refined at adding some of these rings around. Overlapping. That makes such a difference, don't it? You can really, you can clearly see it, can't you? At that point, you can see that reflection. I always think it's a good idea as well to be slightly dry with your brush. This is that grey. Press it a little bit flat and just come straight down to make it have a greater sense of reflection. Those little dry downward flicks do work well. I mean, it's up to you how far you want to go with your painting. Always remember that at the end of the day, you know, this is a, for want of a better word, you know, it's like a little mini exercise, I suppose, really, I guess is what we're trying to say here. I've got some white paint here, Matthew Palmer white, a good quality white paint. This one's quite liquid, so it's really easy to use. White acrylic or gouache is something a bit equally as nice to use here. And I want to take a clean brush. Don't get any red in this if you can help it. I popped it on a bit of scrap paper because it's quite a difficult colour to clean from your palette is white, so I tend to just pop it on there. Got a little bit of white there. I could mix that with a bit of red possibly, we'll see how we go. But just mixing it into the brush like so. And what's white going to do for this? Well, it's going to pop a little bit of highlight in. Little tap on tissue, but just little bits of light, like just on the corner here. Now, if you notice, it's going to appear quite pink because we are painting it over the top, obviously, of pink. And it's going to really give us a lovely highlight. Follow the shape, follow the contour of the flamingo. Look at that little line there. That simple bit of a dry white line. What a difference that makes. A few flicks in the feathers here will massively brighten it up. Notice that I'm following the direction all the time, following the direction of the contour of it. A bit more white there. A few little flicks on the back here. Even a little bit's coming down into those legs. And if you're really careful, don't forget that little tap on tissue is quite useful. Just pop a little bit of light in the legs. to make it look more realistic. That little bit of white where the two legs overlap, quite useful. Nice little way to finish off this project, folks, and white paint is always good to have. I'm quite a fan of it, as I'm sure you are aware. When it comes to adding a bit of white into the head, I would be probably changing the brush here. So we're going to go for the nice fine branching detail brush there. Make sure it's got all the grey off it, because what we do want to do with this is add just a subtle highlight into the eye. Okay, so a little bit of white on that brush there. Steady hand, close-up glasses, a little white dot just to give a little bit of a highlight. Easier said than done sometimes, that on something so small, but it does make quite a difference. A little bit of white where the beak, the top section overlaps the bottom section. A little bit of a white flick. Just a few little refinements that you can do without. I mean, all the white, if you're not going to white paint, just leave these bits off. A few little bits of white paint like that do actually add quite a bit of interest to it. And then of course, while that brush is in your hand, you can continue to add any little bits of feathery detail that you wish. If the white gets a bit dry, just add a bit of water to it. Other than that, I think we're probably about there. It is amazing what a difference white paint actually makes, and having that slightly dry brush with it is quite good. Now that white paint will be not really much use once it's dry. It'll dry within an hour or so, so it's always best to leave it. But thank you for watching, folks, and there you go, a beautiful pink flamingo chilling out in the ocean. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for more watercolour painting. Take care.